Hello everyone. I thought you might enjoy flipping through this native plant catalog with me today. They have a really stunning picture on the front of a hummingbird feasting on a red lobelia. These are beautiful plants with a true red flower. I'm sure we'll see some other red flowered plants in the pages of this catalog. The one that comes to mind immediately is royal catchfly, another interesting specimen. So in the garden setting, this plant readily self-seeds. It's a bit unpredictable about whether it comes back in most conditions where I've planted it. There's a telltale rosette that forms at the base of the plant flat against the ground, and also these white specks along the leaf margins. It's kind of a giveaway if it's not actively flowering. So I've not flipped through this catalog, but I'm very excited to do so. Hopefully I can discover something new, some new information, some new ideas. Native plants are very important in the considerations that I make when adding plants to gardens and doing design work. This is a really beautiful plant, actually very striking. This sort of gives an indicator of its beauty, but it's really phenomenal. There are a few different milkweeds in cultivation, and they're very important because they create a habitat for endangered monarch butterflies, and the caterpillars need both nectar plants and the Asclepias species to thrive. And some nectar plants I'm sure will also be in the pages. My favorite being Liatris, or Blazing Star. Alright, well, this is for the ambitious gardener to get an easy handle on native plant gardening. They'll send you these kits with plant starts, and looks like most of these are going to be included in the pages, so we won't individually go through them, but I've used most of these to great effect. I'll try to give just a little bit of insight as we go. Alright, so they also have on offer a mixture, which I think is a good idea. Often in the nurseries, if you can find these species, at least in my region, there's an average price of about $15 for each perennial plant, so you could very quickly rack up quite a fee if you're starting your garden from scratch. But part of the fun is kind of taking what you've already got and adding to it, and constantly changing and reevaluating the garden to create a restful atmosphere or a sense of excitement. There's many effects you can get. Oh, and here's our hummingbird from the front cover. And this is the blue lobelia. They're saying it just wants a slight bit more moisture than the red. There are several different mountain mints, and the last one I planted was Flexiosum, I think, and you could really bend the stalks without any risk of breaking them. There's also like the slender leaf. They all have a wonderful scent, and they're probably the best for attracting pollinators. Bees and wasps being the most important, of course, in nature, but followed by flies, and then moths and beetles, and just about any crawling insect can pollinate. That's the appeal of these attractive flowers, to attract pollinators. Certain other plants, such as the ambrosia species, are pollinated by the wind. And so if you have trouble with hay fever, like I do, very serious allergic rhinitis, it's due to ragweed just spreading up to 1 billion grains of pollen from each plant, and it's been found very far out to sea and high up in the atmosphere. Goldenrod is the Solidago species. It's not the culprit if you happen to have hay fever. But these wonderful plants, this season, I've updated or made significant changes to, or added or created a handful of butterfly gardens using most of these. Goldenrod and asters are coming into bloom now. This is, we're nearing mid-September. And this is one that isn't in any of the gardens that I work in. However, it used to be. It's a silphium, very, very tall, square stems, and nice architectural plant. But I have planted this one recently, another beautiful architectural specimen with really interesting leaves and flowers. And I would suspect that pretty much everything in here is going to nurture wildlife in some way. Okay, we have some grasses, big and little blue stem are certainly classics. Little blue stem can actually get kind of tall despite its name. And then the northern sea oats or the river oats will spread if they like the conditions they're in. Sporobolus is the prairie drop seed, which is wonderful. I was just reading about the Highline garden in New York City and some of the changes that they've made to allowing the public. I think they've shut down a small portion of it, and you have to go in one direction, and there's only access from one entry point. And I was reading about prairie drop seed on their app having a scent, and there's one right outside of my door. And indeed, right now, if you pinch the seed heads and sniff them, they do have kind of a cilantro-like scent. So they're doing a good service here by offering up a large variety of plants. And this seems like a very scientific approach to seed starting, so quite a bit of education here included, and this is actually a very nice touch. It's really pleasant that they've added these various seeds along the margin, and I like that as certainly a good stylistic choice, and I even really like that they just did it on this top corner, adding some asymmetry. Lots of education here, wonderful. Okay, I guess we're getting into the plants now, and there we have Liatris, the one that I mentioned being one of my favorite plants and a wonderful nectar plant for monarchs. These are monarch butterflies, and you'll see monarch caterpillars in the weeks before the butterflies emerge, and they make a long journey from Mexico and then all the way through our country into the cold north. And I mostly like the Liatris spicata. It's very tall and upright and can stand like 5 feet tall, spikes of purple or white. It looks like they're not offering spicata here, but this looks like sort of similar. And it's a 4-footer, so there's a lot of different Liatris varieties. The one that's in cultivation, often found at garden centers in this region, is Kobold, which is shorter, and is named after a creature from Dungeons and Dragons. Alright, Black-Eyed Susans, the Rudbeckia family, and they've got a nice selection of echinaceas here. This kind of has the look of a Tennessee coneflower, like it's blasting off into space versus having the petals splayed out like this. And a nice healthy selection, the most classic of course being the purpurea, just a strong purple. This is the source of thistle, and thistle seeds are good for finches and similar birds in the wintertime. Alright, so some mountain mint and pygnanthemum. There's several, at least 3 or 4 can usually be found locally. And Veronicastrum we mentioned earlier. Here's an example of the beautiful flower, and they get quite tall, 5 feet they say here. So, beard tongues, or the penstemon, I found that they do really well in clay soil and just about everywhere. I've rarely had a penstemon fail. And they hold on to their seed pods and hold them upright in most conditions for a really long time. It's wonderful. So, plant specialists have bred a lot of these plants to have a lot of interesting characteristics. And so, there's a blue, false blue indigo, and yellow cultivars, and here's an example of a white with a beautiful bird with a flash of red on the wing. And interesting names on these plants that are in cultivation. Alright, catchfly can be a bit sticky for insects. And it's a underutilized plant. And the giant hyssop, which is quite tall, maybe around 6 feet. I've noted them to definitely have that habit. Great. All right. So we are returning to information about lobelias, and there's the Sylphium. These are accurately represented here with the 8-foot height. And so beautiful St. John's wort actually does really well in most conditions, can take a lot of different soil types, and just really belongs in every garden, and they can withstand rejuvenation, pruning, and kind of a hard cut back as well. Alright, this is really interesting. Multicolored bloom, very reminiscent of candy. I'll have to use this plant. Okay, the Monardas are an important plant family, and there are many different kinds and many different colors, often like soft purples all the way up to blazing red color. And Coreopsis also, you can get a wide variety of foliage textures from Coreopsis and heights. Some plants 5 feet or taller, and then most of them are short though, and versions can have multicolored blooms, and reds and yellows. Fantastic plants, and I definitely recommend threadleaf Coreopsis, which emerges early in the spring and has a nice lacy foliage that it's always attractive and fits in almost every front of the border situation. If you give Rattlesnake Master plenty of sun, you'll get lots and lots of blooms in only a few years, and it's a great statement piece. I would probably place it in concert with yucca and other plants that would be sort of reminiscent of an arid climate. Alright, Black-eyed Susans belong in every garden. Just watch that they don't spread too much. A number of asters and goldenrods, and fine photography here throughout. I just saw my first New England aster blooming today, a few hours ago. And here's the indigo, blue indigo. Wonderful plants, and they're herbaceous, but they form a large shrub by the end of the season, especially after having a few years to get established. Alright, this is the beautiful native columbine, which will self-seed, and it's always enjoyable to walk into a garden that has a lot of this plant on display. Okay. Spiderwort can also be found in our native woodlands. Not sure which one, but interesting plants. Can bloom for quite a while if they enjoy the space they find themselves in. Wonderful selection of plants here. Looks like they've sort of blended everything into a mixture. This is our only perennial cactus. It's got these large spikes as well as some kind of hidden smaller ones, so be careful if you're ever maintaining this plant. Okay, great. Wonderful plants. It's a lupine. Lots of color. So in these catalogs and in plant ID guides, often don't really get to see the foliage, which can also be very satisfying in its own right. Okay, so we have a large hibiscus. The one I planted a few years ago was called Cherry Chocolate, so plant breeders have done amazing things with the hibiscus family. That also includes Rose of Sharon. Alright, verbenas can be interesting. I think they're all purple, if I'm not mistaken. Beautiful plants. Very satisfying. Okay, obedient plant is known for the habit, or the characteristic that you can move these individual flowers to the left or to the right, and they'll stay where you place them. But watch out, it spreads aggressively. Also comes in white, I believe. If you have tall Joe Pye weed, be sure to cut it back to keep it more compact. I've seen these form into gargantuan plants, which if you have the space for it, let it go. I like the cultivar called Little Joe, which stays nicely compact. And I would definitely don't blame them for showing this beautiful hummingbird over and over again. Yeah, I'm a fan of this company, even after this small introduction to their offerings, because they're offering education, tours of the site, historical info. Looks like a tight-knit group of people who enjoy their work. Alright, so wild senna, I think, is in one garden I maintain, and if I'm not mistaken, it can also spread if you let it go to seed, so watch out. Oh, this is a wonderful plant. Indian physic has a spectacular fall color, which it's just starting to take on in my region of the world. And kind of an understated bloom, but white blooms go with everything. They can accent any of the other colors that happen to be in the garden at the time, and they always look good against the various colors of green foliage. So yeah, very important here, the Asclepias family. They use mostly butterfly weed. It emerges really, really late in the season, and it can be a bit unpredictable in terms of whether it likes where you place it, but it's worth it to try in almost every setting. And there's also common milkweed, which spreads too aggressively for most small or medium-sized gardens, and has a larger oval-shaped leaf. There's also the swamp milkweed, which is interesting and worthwhile. These others I've not really used. This is a wonderful plant that's also right outside, and it holds its blooms for quite some time. And the flowers are firm. It's not like a delicate petal at all. Alright, now we have some shade plants. So the very interesting yet not very showy in any colorful way. Check the pulpit and the serum, and the flowers of this plant lay on the ground under the canopy. And this is a very interesting style of emerging from the soil in the spring. Okay. A few other selections here. Trout lily with an absolutely beautiful mottled leaf. And strawberry, which makes a suitable ground cover if you have that inclination. Yeah, here we have it is a bit of a shame that Jacob's ladder is not being featured here with a shot of the foliage as well, because that's sort of how it got its name. Ladder shaped, as you would imagine. A couple ferns, beautiful ferns. The most interesting fern I've seen this season is arborvitae style foliage. Really, really interesting. Flowers, such beauty. It's so interesting. Interesting. The zigzag goldenrod I like just for the name. 3 feet tall, yeah. Sounds pretty nice. Some of the native goldenrods can get quite tall and fall over. Mistflower is a wonderful plant, and luckily it occupies a lot of the gardens that I work in, and at this time of the year it is spectacular and should be allowed to spread. It does not spread aggressively. It can easily be kept in check, and this picture does not do it any justice. The blue is wonderful and nicely described. I haven't been reading any of the descriptions, but I'm also a fan of descriptors such as this one, resembling a blue-purple fog. Great. Okay, mixture of grasses here for textural contrast, and also it's just wonderful when the wind hits the grass, and drop seed being one of my favorites. It really resembles water flowing gently, and grasses. I think there's space for a grass in just about every garden. If not a matrix of them, just a couple specimen plants. And some carex, which are grass-like. Okay, grass alternative. This would really be enjoyable if you wanted a zero maintenance kind of lifestyle with no grass mowing. Alright, so now we have a mixture of tools, and it looks like they've curated the tool mixture pretty well. These look like nitrile style gloves, which are fantastic. And this is an A.M. Leonard soil knife. Indispensable, worth every penny, I would say. And a number of other things here. So I'll have to give this a closer look when I'm checking out this catalog in a more leisurely manner. And some information about a small-scale prairie that was planted. So they're really helping out the pollinators have some seed mixes. So quickly establishing plants. Nice. Oh, this is well labeled and interesting. So this looks like a ironweed, and some silphiums, and maybe some helianthus. So a fun adventure if you have the space for larger plants. So shady woodlands, definitely some of my favorite environments. So relaxing and cool in the summer months. And this is called a shooting star. I don't think I noticed it elsewhere in the catalog, but it's a really nice ephemeral plant. And some other information about pollinators, and written by people who certainly understand our stewardship role in this modern world, where a lot of our nature and woodlands and the natural setting is decidedly unnatural in most cases now because of human involvement. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this quick flip through of the Prairie Moon Nursery catalog. Thanks for watching.